embrace them, oh, may we be closer to you, and may we be open to you.
Shana Tova Umituka, a good and sweet year, this new year of 5,782. Just to give you a sense of where the day is going, a little bit of schedules, and you can plan accordingly. We'll be here, I don't know, till 12:30, 12:45. At 1 o'clock, there will be our annual Yom Kippur study session. This year, we'll be talking about what Jewish law has to say about abortion. Full disclosure, I just went on the Planned Parenthood board a month ago. My timing is impeccable as always, depending on how you look at it. At 2:15, that'll last about an hour. Then at 2:15, we'll have our Yom Kippur meditation led by our music director, Laura Steinell. Both those will take place either you can be in person, masked up down the hall. We've got a meeting room for both of those, or we will also have it on Zoom. So if you're heading for home and you want to Zoom in, you can do that as well. At 3:30, we will have Yisker and our afternoon service. They run together. And a short break, and then we do our Nila concluding service, which starts about 5:10 or so and runs till about 6 o'clock, and we will have Havdalah to end our Yom Kippur and a little nash to break the fast. So with that, our service begins on page 147. What was the procedure for public fast days? They would bring the ark to the city square and place wood ash upon the ark and upon the heads of the chief rabbi and the chief justice. And all the people placed ash upon their own heads. Then a respected member of the community would address the people with words of admonition. Friends, it is not said of the people of Nineveh that God saw their sackcloth and their fasting, but rather that God saw their deeds and how they were turning back from their evil ways. And in the prophet it says, rend your hearts, not your clothing. Service continues on page 158. Pure, my God, is the soul you've given me. You formed it, you shaped it, you breathed it into me. You keep it safe within me. Someday when the soul returns to you, I will find a place in eternity. But as long as spirit breathes within me, I place before you my thanks, eternal my God and God of my ancestors, creator of all creation, sovereign of all souls. Baruch atah Adonai asher b'yado nefesh kol chai v'ruach kol basar ish. We give you praise, Adonai. All life is in your hand, and in your care the soul of every human being. We continue our service. Those excerpts were from the morning blessings, the Birkot HaShachar. We go to the second part of the service, the Sukkah de Zimra. Psalms or songs of praise to God, thinking about God's attributes, God's characteristics that are praiseworthy, and being more connected with God. Baruch Shamar v'haya olam, Baruch hu, Baruch osev v'reshit, Baruch omer v'yoseh, Baruch ozer u'mekayem, Baruch merachem al haaretz, Baruch merachem al briot, Baruch mishalem zachar tov l'reah, Baruch ha'lead v'kayam lanetzach, Baruch podo matzil, Baruch shemo. Blessed is the one who spoke the world into being, praised is God. Praise the one who is ever creating. Praise the one who creates with a word. Praise the one whose vision is made real. Praise the one who loves the earth. Praise the one who loves earth's creatures. Praise the one whose worshipers know goodness. Praise the one whose life and being lasts forever. Praise the one who rescues and sets free. Blessed is your name, our sovereign. We praise you with songs of celebration. Your oneness is the life of the cosmos. Baruch atah Adonai melech mula batishbachot. Blessed are you, Adonai, your majesty is celebrated in songs of praise. Page 167. Ashrei, David's song of praise. Adonai, my sovereign God, I praise your name. Boundless is your glory, compassionate and full of grace, deeply patient, gentle and just. Every generation sings of you, forever tells your story. Goodness and mercy extend to all, hands open wide to nourish life. I celebrate your faithful love. Joyful forever, we sing to you. Ashrei, page 168.
אשרי יושבי ביתך, O Dieu, Halleluja, O Dieu, Halleluja, אשרי יושבי ביתך, O Dieu, Halleluja, O Dieu, Halleluja, אשרי יושבי ביתך, O Dieu, Halleluja, O Dieu, Halleluja, אשרי יושבי ביתך, O Dieu, Halleluja, O Dieu, Halleluja.
Service continues on page 170, Psalm 150, Hallelujah.
Please join us.
We now transition into the main part of our service, beginning with Hamelech on page 173.
Shochem ad marom, v'kadosh
Uvmakalot rivavot amcha beit Yisrael. Brina yaparshim chamalkenu b'chol dor v'hador. Yishtabach shimcha le'ahad malkenu. Ha'el hamelech hagadol v'kadosh b'shamayim u'va'aretz. Ki l'chana Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu. Shir shvcha leil v'zimra. Oz u'memshala netzach g'dulag v'urati laveti feret. Kedusha malchut brachot vodot me'ata v'ad olam. Baruch atah Adonai. El melech gadol batish bachot el haodod. Adonai niflot habocher b'shirei zimra melech elchei ha'olamim. Those who wish may now rise for Chatzi Kaddish on page 176, which will lead us into the Baruch Hu on 178. Please be seated. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hapoteach lanu sharei rachamim me'er einenu mechakim l'slichato yotzer or v'rei choshech oseh shalom u'v'rei hakol. Praise to you, Adonai our God, whose power fills the cosmos, who opens for us the gates of compassion and lights up the eyes of those who await forgiveness. Shaper of light, source of the darkness, maker of peace, creator of all. Continue on page 181. Like an unbroken current, energy streams from the source, bathing the planet in light, calling forth life, movement, mind, unfolding from matter, the power to love. And we offer it back to you, our own creative energy, ever dreaming, building, shaping patterns out of chaos, searching out light in the darkness. Creation never ceases, not for an instant. All life is aglow with your light. All things draw sustenance from the source. Baruch atah Adonai yotzer hameorot. On page 183, you love us by helping us grow. You give us Torah, a ladder for the soul, words that draw us upward, every mitzvah, an invitation to climb. Forge and kiln and crucible to purify our hearts. You give us Torah. You love us by helping us grow. Page 184. Unite us in love and reverence for you, that we may never feel ashamed of our deeds. We have trusted in your great and holy name. Now let us celebrate at last the joy of your salvation. V'havienu, page 184. V'havienu l'shalom, me'arba kanfot haaretz, v'tolichenu komemiut, komemiut lehartzeinu, ki el poel yeshuot ata, uvanu v'charta koam lilashon, v'kerav tanu l'shimcha hagadol, selah behemet lehodo lecha, uyachedcha be'ahava. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher b'amo Yisrael be'ahava. Shema, page 186. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam. Ve'ahavta, page 188.
אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך, ובקומך.
So traditionally, what is the third paragraph after the Shema Vayomer is, for some reason, is not in the morning service in this Machzor, but it is in the evening service. So if you want to turn back to page 36 and keeping kind of a finger where you were, we can chant it together. Vayomer Adonai HaMoshe Lemor Daber El B'nai Yisrael V'yarta Alehem V'yasu Lehem Tzitzi Al Kanfeg Divrehem L'dorotam V'natnu Al Tzitzi Kanaf Batil Techelet V'yelechem L'Tzitzi Uritem Otos Kartem B'kol Mitzvot Adonai V'yasitem Otam V'lo Tatuhu Acharei levavchem v'acharei nechem, asher atem zonim achareihem, leman tizkaru v'asitem ekol mitzvotai v'atem kedoshim le'loechem, Ani Adonai Elohechem, asher tzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, liot lachem Elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem, Adonai Elohechem emet. Now continue with prayer, praising God's power of redemption from Shirat Hayam, the Song of the Sea, in the book of Exodus, Mi Chamocha, page 196. Those who wish may now rise for Tzur Yisrael on 196, which will lead us into the Amidah.
Tzur Yisrael, Kuma B'Ezrat Yisrael, Go'aleinu Adonai Tzvaot Shemo, Kedosh Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai, God Yisrael.
Adonai Svatai Titaku Fiagiti Lateka. Adonai, open my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Amidah, page 200. Page 202.
Melech
Baruch Shemo.
Magen Avraham Bezrat Sarah. Ata Gibor Le'olam Adonai. Mechayem Metim Ata Rav LeHoshia. Kel Chaim Bechesed, Mechayem Etzim Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim, Rofeh Cholim, Umatir Asurim.
Please be seated. Continue on page 207. Who by fire, who by water, who in the sunshine, who in the nighttime, who by high ordeal, who by common trial, who in your mercy, in your merry, merry month of May, who by very slow decay, and who shall I say is calling? Who in her lonely slip, who by barbiturate, who in these realms of love, who by something blunt, who by avalanche, who by powder, who for his greed, who for his hunger, and who shall I say is calling? Who by brave ascent, who by accident, who in solitude, who in this mirror, who by his lady's command, who by his own hand, who in mortal chains, who in power, and who shall I say is calling? Page 208, Unatana Tokef. In truth, you are a judge and plaintiff, counselor and witness. You inscribe and seal, you record and recount. You remember all that we have forgotten. And when you open the book of memories, it speaks for itself. For every human hand leaves its mark, an imprint like no other. And so, great shofar will cry Tekiyah, a still small voice will be heard. Angels in a whirl of fear and trembling will say, behold the day of judgment, for they too are judged. In your eyes, even they are not blameless. All who come into the world pass before you like sheep before their shepherd. As a shepherd considers the flock when it passes beneath the staff, you count and consider every life. You set bounds, you decide destiny, you inscribe judgments. Page 212. B'Rosh Hashanah yikatehevun, u'v'yom Kippur yikatehemun. On Rosh Hashanah, this is written. On the fast of Yom Kippur, this is sealed. How many will pass away from this world? How many will be born into it? Who will live and who will die? Who will reach the ripeness of age and who will be taken before their time? who by fire and who by water, who by war and who by beast, who by famine and who by drought, who by earthquake and who by plague, who by strangling and who by stoning, who will rest and who will wander, who will be tranquil and who will be troubled, who will be calm and who tormented, who will live in poverty and who in prosperity, who will be humbled and who exalted. Berosh Hashanah yikatehevun, uvyom Yom Kippur yikatehevun. Uteshuva tefilo tzedakah me'avrin et roa hagazera. But through return to the right path, through prayer and righteous giving, we can transcend the harshness of the decree. You are everything that we praise you for, slow to anger, quick to forgive. You do not wish the death of sinners, but urge them to return from their ways and live. Until the day of death, you wait for them. You accept them at once if they return. Since you created us, you know our impulses. We are but flesh and blood. Those who wish may now rise for the Kedusha, page 218. Please be seated. Continue in the bottom of page 223. Uvachain, and so, to be awake is to be alive. Only that day dawns to which we are awake. One cannot help but be in awe when one contemplates the mysteries of eternity of life, of the marvelous structure of reality. It is enough if one tries merely to comprehend a little of this mystery every day. Never lose a holy curiosity. Wisdom begins with awe of the eternal. Continue on page 226. Uvachain sadikim, and so in your holiness, give the righteous the gift of a vision bright with joy, a world where evil has no voice, and the rule of malevolence fades like wisps of smoke. Good people everywhere will celebrate the stunning sight of arrogance gone from the earth. Continue with Kadosh Ata, page 228.
Like
Continue in the bottom of page 230. In your love, eternal our God, you've given us this Yom Kippur, a day on which our wrongs are forgiven, a day of sacred assembly, a day to be mindful of our peoples going out from Egypt. Page 232, Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'yimatenu, Yelevi yavo v'yagia v'yarev v'etzeh, v'yishma yifkadeh v'yizacher, zichronenu v'nodenu, zichron avotenu v'yimatenu, zichron Yerushalayim ir kodshecha, zichron kol amcha beit Yisrael lefanecha, l'fleita l'tova, l'cheinu chesed urakamin l'chaim l'shalom, b'yom ha'kippurim hazeh. Our God and God of the generations before us, may a memory of us ascend and come before you. May it be heard and seen by you, winning your favor and reaching your awareness together with the memory of our ancestors, the memory of your sacred city, Jerusalem, the memory of your people, the family of Israel. May we be remembered for safety, well-being, and favor, for love and compassion, for life and for peace on this day of atonement. Zachrenu Adonai Eloheinu bo l'tovah, eternal our God, remember us. Ufdenu vo livracha, be mindful of us and redeem us. V'hoshienu vo l'chaim, for a life of goodness and blessing, and let us say, Amen. Favor us with words of deliverance and mercy. Show us the depth of your care. God, we await your redemption, for you reign with grace and compassion. Continue on page 237. Help us to serve you truly with purity of heart, for you are the forgiver of Israel in every generation, granting pardon to the tribes of Yeshurun. We have no God of forgiveness and pardon but you alone. Baruch atah Adonai, melech mochel v'solech l'avotenu, l'amo beit Yisrael, ma'avir ashmotenu b'chol shana v'shana, melech al kol ha'aretz, mekadesh Yisrael v'yom ha'kippurim. You are blessed, Adonai, sovereign, who forgives our failings and pardons the failings of your people, the house of Israel. You banish our guilt from year to year. You reign in majesty over all the earth. You sanctify the people of Israel in the day of atonement. Continue now with Ritzeh, page 238. Eternal our God, your people Israel yearns for your favor. Receive their prayer with love and acceptance, and may you always desire your people's worship. Divine One, close to all who call upon you, bring your grace and presence near to those who serve you. Pour forth your Spirit on us, and may our eyes see your merciful return to Zion. Baruch atah Adonai, machazer shekinato l'tzion. Blessed are you, divine presence is felt again in Zion. And on page 240, the prayer of gratitude and thanks, Modim anachnu lach, God who is ours, God of all generations, to you we are grateful forever. Rock and protector of our lives, your saving power endures from age to age. We thank you and tell the tale of your praise, your power in our lives, your caring for our souls, the constant miracle of your kindness. Morning, noon, and night, we call your goodness, for your compassion never ends. We call you mercy, for your love has no limit. We call you hope, now and for all time. 242, and for all these gifts, God of majesty, may your name come to be blessed and praised, our gratitude a daily offering until the end of time. Inscribe your covenant partners for a life of goodness, and may all life resound with gratitude and faith in praise of your name, God. You free us and strengthen us. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha l'cha na'el lehodot. Blessed are you, Adonai, whose goodness deserves thanks and praise. On page 244, Eloheinu. Our prayer for peace, Sim Shalom, page 246. Baruch atah Adonai oseh hashalom. You are blessed one, eternal source of shalom. On page 252, those who wish may rise. For Avinu Malkeinu, we'll read responsively from Hebrew to the English. Avinu Malkeinu Shema Kolenu.
Avinu Malkeinu, almighty and merciful, hear our voice.
Avinu Malkeinu Chatanu Lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, we have strayed and sinned before you.
Avinu Malkeinu Chamo Aleinu V'al Aleinu V'tapenu.
Avinu Malkeinu, have compassion on us and our families.
Avinu Malkeinu Kalev Dera V'chera V'ra Me'aleinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, halt the onslaught of sickness, violence, and hunger.
Avinu Malkeinu Kale Kol Tsar Umashtin Me'aleinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, halt the reign of those who cause pain and terror.
Avinu Malkeinu Kavenu B'Sefer Chaim Tovim.
Avinu Malkeinu, enter our names in the book of lives well lived.
Avinu Malkeinu Chadesh Aleinu Shana Tova.
Avinu Malkeinu, renew for us a year of goodness.
Avinu Malkeinu Malei Yadenu Mirbirchotecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, let our hands overflow with your blessings.
Avinu Malkeinu Harem Keren Mishichecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, let our eyes behold the dawn of redemption.
Avinu Malkeinu Na'al Teshivenu Rekam Milifanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, we pray, do not turn us away from you with nothing.
Avinu Malkeinu Kabel Barachamim Uvratzon Et Tefilatenu.
Avinu Malkeinu, welcome our prayer with love, accept and embrace.
Avinu Malkeinu Aseh Imanu Laman Shemecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, act toward us as befits your name.
Avinu Malkeinu Aseh Laman Chaim Lo Laman Adnenu.
Avinu Malkeinu, act for your sake, if not for ours.
Avinu Malkeinu Ein Lanu Melech Ela Ata.
Avinu Malkeinu, you alone are our sovereign.
Avinu Malkeinu Patach Sharei Shamayim L'Tefilatenu.
Avinu Malkeinu, let the gates of heaven be open to our prayer.
Avinu Malkeinu Shema Kolenu Chus V'Rachem Aleinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, hear our voice, treat us with tender compassion.
Avinu Malkeinu Chanenu Vanenu Ke'en Banu Ma'asim Aseh Imanu Tzedaka V'Chesed V'Hoshienu.
Avinu Malkeinu, almighty and merciful, answer us with grace, for our deeds are wanting. Save us through acts of justice.
Avinu Malkeinu.
We would like for you to join us on each Avinu Malkeinu phrase if you're comfortable, and we'll show you when.
Please be seated. Our Torah service begins on page 255. Ein kamocha ve'Elohim Adonai v'ein kamahasecha malchutecha malchut kol olamim u'memshaltecha b'chol dor v'hador Adonai melech Adonai malach Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed Adonai oz le'amo yitein, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom, av harachamim, heitiv avirtzoncha et Zion, tivnech omot Yerushalayim, Tivnech omot Yerushalayim, ki v'cha levad batachnu, melech el ram v'nisa, adon olamim. Turn to page 256. Those who wish may now rise. Now I ask Louis Brynon to come up. We'll hold the Torah for us, and then when we're ready, the Greenwald family come up too, as they'll help with unwrapping the Torah, Hagba, and Galila. Adonai iti, unaroma ma shemo yachdav. Please be seated. The Torah portion for this Yom Kippur morning is from the book of Vayikra, the book of Leviticus. It's not in your Machzorim. In the Reform movement, they've landed on one Torah portion from Genesis, one from Deuteronomy, but then we're back to Leviticus this afternoon. And so to roll this only Torah that we have back and forth is a little too much strain on the poor guy. So the Torah portion we're doing is from the traditional Torah portion for Yom Kippur morning. It is basically the description of the holiday. And all I really will say about it at this point is that I marvel at the idea that a holiday that is mentioned with some detail in the Torah, giving the date that it is a Shabbat Shabbaton, a day of complete rest and more, and that we're still celebrating it in the year 5782 is kind of a mind-boggling and wonderful idea about our longevity and our sense of connectedness, not just with those who we kind of share the planet with right now, but of generations that have come before us and the generations that will follow. So with that, I will ask Frank Lipson and Janet Mark to come up for Torah blessings. Baruch Adonai Barak Le'olam Va'ed. Amen. Shabbat Shabbaton hi lachem venitem et nafshotechem hukat olam v'chaper hakohen asher yimsak oto asher yimalei et yado l'chachen tachat aviv lavash et bigdei habad bigdei hakodesh v'chiper et migdash hakodesh v'ohel moed v'amizbeach yechaper v'al kohanim v'al kolam hakahal yechaper v'azot lachem l'chukat olam l'chaper el b'nei Yisrael machal chatotetam Achat bashana vayas kasher tziva Adonai et Moshe. Amen. Thank you. It's now time, when we think about those in our community that can't be with us due to illness, we wish them Rufah Shlema, Rufat HaNefesh, Rufat HaGuf, a complete healing, a healing in both spirit and body. On the bottom half of page 273 is the Mishnah Berach prayer. We posted the names of those we know are in need of a blessing of healing. I'll ask if there are any other names you know of, anybody else, if you'll call out their names as I kind of point around the room. Okay, thanks. And Pinchas ben Liba. Let's join together. Lewis and the Greenwalds to rejoin me at the Torah table. On page 274 is Vizot HaTorah, and as the Torah is lifted and then wrapped, I'll ask those who wish to now rise. Please be seated. So this massive Torah, there are about 2 people in the congregation that I'm aware of that can actually lift this thing and show 3 columns. Lewis is one of them. The other is the person who's going to read our Haftorah for us this morning, Robin Nevins. Robin, if you will come up to the bima there, and I'll do blessings from here. Yeah, come on up. So, an introduction to the Haftorah for this Yom Kippur morning. It's from the book of Isaiah. And the tagline here, it is not our fast that God's desire, but to treat each other with compassion and kindness. Which is to say, and on another day I can make the case for a ritual, and I think it is something that connects us and sustains us. But ritual is empty unless we're doing what is right in the world. So with that, I'll start with the blessings before the Haftorah, and then on page 275, and then Robin will read beginning on 277. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nviim tovim v'ratza v'divreihem hanemarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher b'Torah, u'Moshe avdo, u'Yisrael amo, u'Vinviei ha'emet v'tzedek.
Cry from the depths, says God. Do not hold back. Lift up your voice like the shofar. Tell my people their transgression and the house of Jacob their sin. Yes, they seek me daily, as though eager to learn my ways, as if they were a nation that does what is right and has not abandoned God's law. They ask of me the right way, eager for God's nearness. They say, why did we fast and you do not see it? We afflict ourselves and you do not know it. Because even on your fast day you think only of desire, while oppressing all who work for you. Because your fasting is filled with strife, and with calloused fist you strike. No, your fasting this day will not lift up your voice before heaven. Is this the fast I desire? A day to afflict body and soul, bowing your head like a reed, covering yourself with sackcloth and ashes? Do you call this a fast, a day worthy of the favor of Adonai? Is not this the fast I desire, to break the bonds of injustice and remove the heavy yoke, to let the oppressed go free and release all those enslaved? Is it not to share your bread with the hungry and to take the homeless poor into your home and never to neglect your own flesh and blood? Then shall your light burst forth like the dawn, and your wounds shall quickly heal, your righteous one leading the way before you, the presence of Adonai guarding you from behind. Then, when you call, Adonai will answer, and when you cry, will respond, I am here. If you remove the chains of oppression, the menacing hand, the malicious word, if you offer your compassion to the hungry and satisfy the suffering, then shall your light shine through the darkness, and your night become bright as noon. Adonai will guide you always, slake your thirst in parched places, give strength to your bones. You shall be like a well-watered garden, an unfailing spring. From you they will rebuild ancient ruins, lay foundations for ages to come. And you shall be called the one who mends the breach and brings back the streets for dwelling. If you cease to trample Shabbat, stop pursuing your affairs on my holy day. If you call Shabbat a delight, the holy day of Adonai honored, and if you honor God by not doing business or speaking of everyday matters, then shall you take pure delight in Adonai. I will lift up your journey on earth to the highest of places and nourish you from the heritage of your father Jacob, for thus spoke Adonai.
Page 279. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam sur kol haolamim tzaddik b'kol hadorot ha'el haneman haomer v'yaseh hamdaber m'kayem shekol davarav emet vad tzedek neman atahu Adonai Eloheinu v'nemanim devarecha v'davarecha ad midvarecha achor le'yashuv rekam ki melech neman v'rakaman atah Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el haneman bechol devarav. Rachem al Tzion ki hi beit chayenu, v'lalu vat nefesh toshia bimheira v'yameinu. Baruch atah Adonai, misameach Tzion bivanecha. 282. Samchenu Adonai Eloheinu Be'elahu Hanavi Avdecha Uvmalchut Beit David Mishichecha Bimhera Yavo V'Yagel Libenu Al Kiso Lo Yeshev Zar V'Lo Yinchalu Odakerim Et Kavodo Ki V'Shem Kodshecha Nishpata Lo Shelo Yichbed Nero Le'olam Va'ed Baruch atah Adonai Magen David Al HaTorah, Ve'al Havodah, Ve'al Hanvim, Ve'al Yom HaKippurim Hazeh, Shenatata lanu Adonai Eloheinu, Limlicha v'lislacha l'chapara, l'chavod u'ltifaret. Al HaKol, Adonai Eloheinu, Anachnu modim lach, Umvarachim otach, Yitbarach Shimcha b'fi kol chai, Tamid le'olam va'ed, Udracha emet v'kayam lad. Baruch atah Adonai, Melech Mochel, V'Salech Lavotenu, Lavanot Amo Beit Yisrael, Mavir Ashmotenu, B'chol Shana V'Shana, Melech Al Kol Haaretz, Mekadesh Yisrael, V'Yom HaKippurim. Continue now reading responsively on 284, the prayer for our congregation. Eternal presence who blessed our mothers and fathers, bless this holy congregation, a house of study, prayer, and righteous deeds. Together we give thanks.
For our leaders, those who learn, teach, and uphold the Torah, inspiring others to learn, teach, and uphold the Torah. Those who do the sacred work of building our community, may their service bring them joy, fulfillment, and purpose, and may they go from strength to strength.
For our members, diverse in age, interest, and background, Jews by birth, Jews by choice, and those of other faiths who join with us, all who offer their time and talent, their love and commitment.
For all who come here on this holy day of Yom Kippur to share the search for meaning and renewal, your presence is a blessing, your friendship a gift.
May the spirit of peace, dignity, and respect live within these walls, inspiring us to care for one another with compassion, and may we be a source of goodness, light, and healing for the world.
May the one who blessed the generations before us bless us as we stand together this day. One congregation joined with all Jewish communities of the world through our prayers on this day of atonement.
Let us renew ourselves for the year ahead. Let us honor the precious legacy that is ours. Those who wish may now rise. Turn to page 294. Excuse me, 290. Yehallelu et Shem Adonai, ki nizkav shemo levado.
Adonai
We say our Torah is an Eitz Chaim, a tree of life, on 291 Ki L'Chak Tov, leads us into Eitz Chaim. Please be seated. So I had mentioned on Rosh Hashanah 3 issues referenced by Rabbi Jeff Salkin in his presentation for the community-wide Slichot service. The first 2, acknowledging the sense of fear and isolation people are feeling due to the pandemic and other reasons that preceded the pandemic, and the need to be a shul that lives out our highest, most resonant Jewish values. These I had addressed on Erev Rosh Hashanah with a promise that I would address the 3rd issue on Yom Kippur. So, as promised, here is issue 3, engaging in serious discussions about God. Before getting into the daunting task of describing God, some preliminary observations. Through a somewhat unorthodox path, we at Kolami have been talking about God for some time now. Following a wonderful suggestion by Terry Smith, we've been focusing our twice-monthly study discussions on the topic of angels in Judaism. For our discussions, we've been using the book A Gathering of Angels by my first rabbi, the one of my youth, Morris Margulies of blessed memory. And in discussing how Judaism and Jews have viewed angels over the millennia, we have been necessarily discussing our relationship with God. We can see the human construct of angels as messengers of God, or we can see angels as a means to get closer to God, particularly during times of persecution and despair when God seems most absent. The discussions have led in some unexpected and fascinating directions. So, in a not too subtle hint, I would be thrilled for others to join us on what is usually the 1st and 3rd Shabbos mornings of every month, including this coming Shabbos, this Saturday at 9:30 a.m. via Zoom, which you can get off the website or newsletter. You can be a part of these wonderful discussions. It is a great way to stay connected in community, and maybe this is a bonus of engaging in God talk, of creating community. You and we fulfill Rabbi Salkin's expressed need for us as Jews to engage in these God discussions. My sense of those who express no belief in God, or maybe more accurately, actively dismiss the notion of God, all have a pretty firm and similar notion of the characteristics of the God they don't believe in. Within Judaism, while not without boundaries, the ways we define and describe God vary widely. Ask 10 different congregants to define God, you could easily get 10 different answers. Our relationship with God and/or with the idea of God is not a straight line. It always has its ups and downs. I've stated and still feel that some of my favorite congregants are the ones who tell me somewhat sheepishly, Rabbi, I'm angry with God. What I tell them back is there's some things worth being angry about, and being angry means you're still connected in the relationship. It being Yom Kippur and all, I don't know of another time during the Jewish year that we spend more time thinking about God, acknowledging God's position over us as judge and jury, beseeching God to remember God's attributes of compassion and mercy. Whether or not we possess a belief that this is literally true, we should at least ponder why we say it. One other initial observation comes in the form of an old bad joke. With my apologies for any surgeons here or at the service here or on live stream, the joke goes like this: what's the difference between God and a surgeon? God knows God's not a surgeon. So I put the joke out there because what the joke attributes to surgeons regarding their ego might be true for all of us and indicate a specific need we have for God. That is, the need to understand who or what we are not, how our power as human beings is limited. In our human construct of the God of Yom Kippur, as I previously mentioned, we have what I refer to as the Avinu Malkeinu God. The Malkeinu God, the sovereign of sovereigns who sits in judgment over all of us, tempered by the Avinu God, the compassionate parent who we beseech to let us continue for another year in the book of life. Yet this God that is arguably one of reward and punishment, while showing up in more traditional Jewish liturgy throughout the year, does not get much play over the course of the entire year in our part of the Jewish world. Rather, we tend to be somewhat skeptical about seeing a direct correlation between God rewarding us for doing good and observing the mitzvot and or being punished for our failure to observe the commandments. Rather, for the majority of the year, when we do think about God, we tend to focus on different aspects of God's existence and influence over our Jewish lives. There are three areas in which God seems to be an issue. The first of the three is revelation, or put another way, it is a question of who wrote the Torah. The more traditional view is that God wrote the Torah, or at the very least, God dictated the entirety of the Torah to Moses while Moses was up on Mount Sinai, including Moses' death scene. The opposing view, at least within Judaism, is that the Torah was written by human beings with divine inspiration. Years ago, friends of Faye and myself were celebrating the upcoming bris of their new son, and to help them out, I picked up the moil who was performing the bris from the airport. He was an Orthodox rabbi, and on the way back in, we had a marvelous discussion, and at the time I was still attending seminary. This pleasant conversation about Torah, and in his view, the question of who wrote the Torah is the question to be answered in Judaism, the dividing line between the more ritually observant and those who are more apt to pick and choose their Jewish ritual observance. Again, another way to restate the premise is one sees the Torah as the Word of God, one who sees the Torah as the Word of God will see the Torah as authoritative. Without getting too far into the weeds on this piece, regardless of where you stand in relation to God's authority, the Torah will ultimately land in human hands, subject to human interpretation, understanding that those interpretations can vary widely. And then I hasten to add that while there are widely varying interpretations of our Torah, there are Jewish boundaries to those interpretations, boundaries as to what interpretation falls within or outside of Jewish thought and practice. The other piece to add is a cautionary note about those who would represent God's authoritative word with absolute certainty, as if God communicated directly with them and not the rest of us. The second place in which God tends to come up is in issues surrounding life and death. This is what we refer to in the Hebrew as olam haba, or the world to come. The more ambitious word for our speculative thought about an afterlife is eschatology. At this point, I know, and nobody should be referencing Woody Allen for a quote, but I did recall he did have a specific reference to this topic, which says he could never believe in reincarnation because if he did, it would mean he would have to sit through the ice capades again. So for us at Kolami, the topic came up a number of years ago when the Reform movement came out with a new Siddur and a new Machzor, which may not be so new to us anymore. It's getting to be an old friend, Mishkan HaTefilah. In the second long blessing of the Amidah, the blessing traditionally culminates with Baruch Atah Hashem Mechayeh HaMeitim. Blessed are you, God, who resurrects the dead. For many years, the Reform Judaism had excised that thought out of the blessing and out of their theological perspective. They had substituted the God who resurrects the dead with the God who gives life to all, Mechayeh HaKol. When Mishkan HaTefilah, Mishkan HaNefesh came out, it kept Mechayeh HaKol, but it put next to it, either in parentheses or with a slant, which is what you'll see in your Machzor, Mechayeh HaMeitim as an alternative choice. With that new insert as an option, I initiated a discussion with the congregation as to which version we should use going forward. And it was decided to go back to the traditional Michayeh HaMetim, giving thanks to the God who resurrects the dead. And it was not so much that there was a widespread belief that God literally resurrects the dead. Rather, people related many stories about living family members who it was told remarkably, if not eerily, resemble in personality and habit relatives who had died. In other words, the dead seemed to live on through the generations to follow in some very specific ways. This is more a sense of premonition than adhering to the existence of an afterlife with absolute certainty. And with that in mind, amongst the things you should never say to someone grieving loss is that they're with God now or God has taken them to a better place. If those grieving loss want to believe that that is their prerogative, but it is in no way a requirement in Judaism. After all, the change in the Reformed Prayer Book is a response to Jews who want to believe in some version of an afterlife. The overarching message is that we just don't know, and our religion, and I think religion in general, allows for our imagination to address or fill in the space of what is not known or what we deem to be part of God's mystery. The third and maybe the most difficult issue surrounding God is in regard to human suffering, or what is known as theodicy. Either God is responsible for all of it, or evil and suffering take place outside of God's control. God either can't deal with it or won't. In a course on Jewish theology I took in seminary, my teacher, Rabbi Len Levin, by the way of his teacher, Rabbi Neil Gilman, this is what a lot like Talmud sounds like. I say in the name of such and such, who says in the name of such and such, and if I go back far enough, it's more and more valid as I go back, but clearly not with me alone by saying it. I digress. We recognize, anyway, three challenges in relation to suffering or evil. An intellectual challenge. We want to understand how something awful happened. An emotional challenge, how do I live with or cope with what happened? And a moral challenge, whatever happened, there needs to be a reason for it. God has to be a just God. We all want some sense of closure, an ending to the story. While there's no such thing as one size fits all when it comes to ritual, I think we as Jews in Judaism do particularly well with the emotional challenge in relation to the ritual surrounding death and mourning. As I have and continue to say, Judaism tells you how to act in exhaustive detail, but we don't tell you how to feel about it. Via ritual, we have a blueprint of what we should or should not do as we grieve, so we are not forced to make a lot of decisions. We are emotionally in the worst position to make those decisions. And at the same time, Judaism gives us a space for mourners to feel however they feel. What I always tell families is that there is no wrong way to feel. So there are two ways of looking at God in theodicy. One is that this all happens on God's watch, and therefore we need to find a way to justify God's actions. So how do we do that? Either God is a product of human freedom, our free will, or God is an enigma. God's ways are mysterious. Or we circle back to our eschatological speculation. While our life on earth has been unfair and tragic, we will be rewarded in Olam Haba, in our afterlife. And indeed, during times of greater persecution in the Jewish world, the speculation about an afterlife is more and more prominent. The other alternative is that God is limited. God cries with us over our tragedies, but God can't control them. In this way, God limits God's power, what we refer to as tzimtzum. So in Jewish mysticism, when the world was created, God contracted from fully filling the universe in order to make room for us as partners in tikkun olam, in repairing the world. I have often cited Rabbi Yitz Greenberg's post-Holocaust theology, in which he frames the theological issues surrounding the Holocaust as a need by us to take more responsibility in our obligations to God and in our covenant with God. So going back to where I started, how do we have conversations about God? How do we come up with some framework or context in having a God discussion that not only makes sense but informs our lives? One way to start may be to turn to Maimonides, the great Spanish Jewish scholar of the 12th century, and the way he developed his negative theology. And by the way, if you were here last night or on live stream at the end of the service, we sang Yigdal. Yigdal is an enumeration of Maimonides' Articles of Faith, his negative theology description of God. Maimonides says that as human beings, we are incapable of describing God's attributes. Rather, he describes God in terms of what God is not. I would add that for those who are determined to lead with our rational side, the desire is to avoid giving any hint that we can project some kind of definitive description of God. This all begs a question about our Torah and our liturgy. Our Torah contains numerous anthropomorphic references to God. God stretching out God's arm, God speaking the world into creation. We have an entire section of our morning service, which we recited a part of this morning, the Suke de Zimra, devoted to praising God's attributes, which we do not hesitate to describe. Maimonides believed these references were designed to facilitate our transition from idolatry to monotheism and the one God that is beyond human description. Much in the same way as keeping kosher could be seen as a transition from being carnivores to being vegetarians. I guess if all this were true about our ongoing tendency to refer to God's attributes, we are still neck-deep in idolatry. But here I differ from Maimonides in that I think giving God human characteristics is a case of us using the only tools we have at our disposal. Rather than have no reference point for God, we do the best we can with what we've got. One can see the opposite to Maimonides' efforts to describe God, or better still to understand God via negative theology, as simply describing God's positive attributes. However, rather than simply endeavor to get a handle on God's positive attributes, which I think we do, again with the Suke de Zimra service, and I'm more than fine with that, or describe what we think God is not, I'm prone to think in terms of who or what we as human beings are not relative to what God might be. Rabbi Daniel Hartman, in his book, Putting God Second, How to Save Religion from Itself, says the following: the God who creates the world and is not created is by definition distinct and other from all created beings. As a result, nothing that exists can be associated with God or given divine qualities or standing. And the point Hartman emphasizes is this: the first lesson of the Bible is not that God created the world, but that a life of faith is founded on the understanding that we are not God. This is what Hartman refers to as the radical uniqueness of God. With radical uniqueness, Hartman notes that there is a danger amongst religions to become a breeding ground for a dangerous form of piety, in which there is expressed contempt for anything that falls outside their understanding of God. It is true both in other religions and it's true within Judaism. It is an acceptance of what I referred to earlier as to what we do not know about God, about how Torah and God are revealed to us, an acceptance about what we don't understand regarding death, and what we don't understand but should never accept about the evil and suffering that exists in the world. But according to Hartman, God's radical uniqueness can also function for the good. It can serve as the ultimate antidote to human arrogance. Our notion of God can limit those human beings who have delusions of grandeur and see their own power and entitlement as limitless. As an important aside, this danger also exists for non-religious people, what Hartman refers to as secular arrogance. It carries with it its own cult-like following and has and continues to be a source for discrimination, racism, oppression, rabid nationalism, and murder. It is the dividing line between the elite and the non-elite, the first world and the third world, insiders and outsiders, and those who count and those who do not. We can, and I do hold to the notion that Judaism puts us on a good path. But as Hartman points out, it's not a zero-sum game. It is not the case of the more we are loved by God, the less someone else could be loved by God. This is a good argument against Jewish exceptionalism. So while Hartman points out the pitfalls in religious and or Jewish exceptionalism, at the same time he establishes why we need religion and why we need God. After all, he is Rabbi Daniel Hartman. God and religion offer access to hope and forgiveness. It can be a shield against the pain and chaos of everyday life, the pain and isolation that has been a part and parcel of the pandemic I referred to on Rosh Hashanah. I add the following positive as to what God and what being Jewish has to offer. I think imagination, a sense of communal myth, and creativity is an incredible opportunity for us as Jews. We're allowed and encouraged in our covenant with God to be partners in the ongoing story of creation. Indeed, we are obligated to use our imagination and creativity to continually think beyond the world that is, to both imagine and then create the world that can and should be. May we, in this new year of 5782, on this day of Yom Kippur, be mindful, accepting, and humble regarding our own limitations, that we are in no way God. Yet may we also serve as an Or Lagoim, a light to the nations, constantly seeking a future vision of what would be a better world, more peaceful and just world, to rejoice in our covenant with God, to live our lives with purpose and meaning. May we bring our community and our world closer to the reality of what our imagination seeks. Kain Yehi Ratzon, may that be God's will. Continue our service now on page 294, Shema Kolenu. Continue on page 296. Our God and God of all generations, may our prayers reach your presence, and when we turn to you, do not be indifferent. Adonai, we are arrogant and stubborn, claiming to be blameless and free of sin. In truth, we have stumbled and strayed. We have done wrong. Those who wish may now rise for Shamnu, page 296. Yai da 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 da, yai da 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 da, yai da 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 da. Ashamnu, Bagadnu, Gazalnu, Dibarnu Dofi, Hevinu, Vehirshanu,
the Hirshanu,
Zadnu,
Zanu,
Kamasnu,
Kamasu,
Tafalnu Sheker,
Tafanu Sheker,
Yatsnu Ra,
Yatsura,
Kizavnu,
Kizavnu,
Lahatsnu,
Latsnu,
Niatsnu,
Niatsnu,
Sararnu,
Saranu,
Avinu,
Avinu,
Pashanu,
Kashanu,
Sararnu,
Saranu,
Kishinu Oref,
Tishinu Oref,
Rashanu,
Rashanu,
Shichatnu,
Shichatnu,
Tiavnu,
Tiavnu,
Tainu,
Tainu,
Titanu.
Titanu.
You know the secrets of the universe and the secrets of the human heart. You know and understand us, for you examine our inner lives. Nothing is concealed from you, nothing hidden from your sight. Eternal One, our God and God of our ancestors, we pray that this be your will. Forgive all our wrongs. Pardon us for every act of injustice. Help us atone for all our moral failures. On page 300, responsively, Hebrew to English, the Achet. Achet shatanu lefanecha be'onas uvratzon, ve'achet shatanu lefanecha be'yodim uvlo yodim.
The ways we have wronged you under duress and by choice, and harm we have caused in your world consciously and unconsciously.
Achet shatanu lefanecha bivli da'at, ve'achet shatanu lefanecha b'ritzat raglaim lehara.
The ways we have wronged you through our thoughtlessness, and harm we have caused in your world through impulsive acts of malice.
Achet shatanu lefanecha b'hozek yad, ve'achet shatanu lefanecha b'zizul horim umarim.
The ways we have wronged you by abusing our power, and harm we have caused in your world through disrespect to parents and teachers.
Achet shatanu lefanecha b'yatzer hara, ve'achet shatanu lefanecha b'yishut oref.
The ways we have wronged you by giving in to our hostile impulses, and harm we have caused in your world through inflexibility and stubbornness.
Achet shatanu lefanecha b'chachach u'chazav, ve'achet shatanu lefanecha b'kalut rosh.
The ways we have wronged you through lies and deceit, and harm we have caused in your world by making light of serious matters.
Achet shatanu lefanecha b'siach sif totenu, ve'achet shatanu lefanecha b'tzabrut ayin.
The ways we have wronged you in our routine conversations, and harm we have caused in your world through envy.
Ve'al kulam, bottom of page 302. Continue on page 304. Achet shatanu lefanecha belo vasater, ve'achet shatanu lefanecha b'sinat chinam.
The ways we have wronged you openly and secretly, and harm we have caused in your world by hating without cause.
Achet shatanu lefanecha b'frikat ol, ve'achet shatanu lefanecha b'ma'acha uv'mishteh.
The ways we have wronged you by losing self-control, and harm we have caused in your world through consumption of food and drink.
Achet shatanu lefanecha b'ilu arayot, ve'achet shatanu lefanecha b'imutz halev.
The ways we have wronged you through sexual immorality, and harm we have caused in your world by hardening our hearts.
Achet shatanu lefanecha b'neshek uv'marbit, ve'achet shatanu lefanecha b'masa uv'matan.
The ways we have wronged you through greed and exploitation, and harm we have caused in your world through dishonesty in business.
Achet shatanu lefanecha b'hihur halev, ve'achet shatanu lefanecha b'chilut.
The ways we have wronged you through our innermost thoughts, and harm we have caused in your world through gossip and rumor.
Achet shatanu lefanecha b'chafat shochad, ve'alchet shatanu lefanecha b'chilul Hashem.
The ways we have wronged you by offering or accepting bribes, and harm we have caused in your world by profaning your name in public.
Ve'al kulam, page 306. Please be seated. Continue on page 310. Our God and God of our ancestors, we are your people, you are our God. We are your children and you are our parents. We are the people who serve you and you call us to serve. We are your community and you are our portion. We are your legacy and you are our purpose. We are your flock and you are our shepherd. We are your vineyard and you watch over us. We are your work and you are our maker. We are your beloved and you are our lover. We are your treasure and you are the one we cherish. We are your people and you reign over us. We offer you our words and you offer us yours. So forgive us, pardon us, lead us to atonement. I'll now call on our president, Winbigan, to come up for a few announcements. And if she does, I'll offer my apology. I cheated you all out of one sin during Ashamnu. Getting a little punchy this time of day, so feel free to go back and add some of your own.
Well, hello again. It's an understatement to say that we live in challenging times. Especially now, we need to take care of ourselves and each other as we honor the Jewish covenant of Pekuach Nefesh. It's so good seeing all of you who are here. It's also great knowing that there are many more watching us through live stream, so hello to all of you as well. Anyone who wants to can come worship with us. There are no strangers at Kol Ami. Everyone is welcome. But as you know, it takes a village to accomplish anything worthwhile. There are a couple of options I have for you, though, in supporting Kol Ami. Throughout the holidays, I have asked you to donate. Now, I'm continuing to ask you to do that, and I will continue in the days to come. But by now, you know what to do, and it's on that screen there if you would like to give to us. If you've donated already, thank you so much. If you've donated to us already, you could do so again if you're so inclined. But there is another option, and that would be to join us as a member. We only need 2 members, 2 full-time members, to help us reach our goal, for us to actually reach the goal. I know I am a shameless fundraiser. I am guilty, but that's because I believe in what we are doing. We at Kol Ami are doing the sacred work of building community. Kol Ami is special, and we need you to help us stay that way. I believe it's important to thank several people who have made our wonderful services happen. They all make it look easy, but they have put in hours of work for all of us. Thank you to Rabbi Doug Alpert for leading us and teaching us, and most of all, representing us in the community as you work for social justice. You make us very proud to be part of Kol Ami. And, of course, to our musicians, Laura Steinell, our music director and producer extraordinaire, thank you. To our singers, our own Brendan Howard and Judith Epstein, and singer Will Perry, and Karen Ingebretson, I will get it by the end of the holiday. Karen Ingebretson, both singer and pianist. And thank you to our guest artist, Monty Carter, who is playing the viola, not the violin. I misspoke the other day. To Ray Berger, Colamy Vice President, who took care of all the details and continues to do so, and to our Colamy Board, who provided serious thought and deliberation on how to keep everyone safe while providing a spiritual and renewing set of services. And to our production team, Mark Gibbons and Dylan Young, thank you. We have come a long way together in carrying out the live stream. Thank you so much. And of course, she's not here to hear this, but thank you to Reverend Dr. Kendall Gibbons, Senior Minister of All Souls UU Church, who always makes us feel welcome and part of her community. And to those of you who participated in the service, it was nice seeing Robin read rather than lift, so thank you, Robin. Thank you all to our generous donors and sponsors who helped keep the service open to the community and provide this live stream option. And to all of you, both here and at home, may you have an easy and meaningful fast. Good Yontif.
I add my thanks to Lord, our musicians, to Wynn, Ray, to all of our lay leaders, and to everyone who makes this so special. Everybody makes me look a lot better than I have any right to look, and it's just my honor to walk with you all on the journey. Coming up, just to reiterate again for today, we've got a study session beginning at 1, meditation at 2:15, Yizkor afternoon service at 3:30, with a short break after that at about 5, and then at about 5:10 we'll start our Nila concluding service. The study and meditation are both in person and on Zoom, take your pick. And the rest of the service for the afternoon is here in person or on live stream. If for nothing else, come back for Nila. If nothing else, it's always a great way to end Yom Kippur together. And really, after a long slog of a day, it's a very joyous time for us. Also coming up down the road, there's stuff that happens after Yom Kippur, believe it or not. This Saturday morning via Zoom. It's a rare Zoom only, not in person, but it'll be a Zoom only study session at 9:30. We'll be back on our book about angels and our discussion of angels and God and us. At 9:30, followed by a short service at 10:30 on Sunday. Josh Sipp and Savannah Hamburg have been incredibly generous in giving us a new sukkah. Which will be unveiled this Sunday. So if you want to come out and help putting it together, assembling it out in our community garden at Mannheim Park at 43rd and Forest, that'll be at 11 o'clock. And then decorating the sukkah will begin around 1 o'clock. And so families will be out there. I urge everybody to come. It's always a great time for Kol Ami. Can always check on coming events in the newsletter and or on the website. We will conclude our service this morning with Hayom on page 318.
Hayom Tamteinu. Hayom Tavarchenu. Hayom Tegarlenu. Hayom Tidshenu Latova. Hayom Tidshenu L'chaim Tovim. Hayom Tishma Shabbatenu. Hayom Tikvichenu B'min Tzidkecha. Amen.
For those who are still fasting, may it continue to be an easy fast and a meaningful fast. And to everyone, Shana Tova, and hope to see you for what else is happening today. Shana Tova.
Once of the recording, just for me.